Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. This one is dated year 2 blog 26, or in legacy numbers, blog 78. Yep, 78 weeks. And today is the 20th of August 2023. And usually I start off randomly. Um, and all I can say really is the weather's quite pleasant today. It's been a pretty busy week in the news and a lot of people's lives from the people that I've been speaking to. And my life continues as it always does, with a bit of an erratic week. But we'll start off with the news like we normally do. So we start off with the war because we always talk about the war. I picked up this news article yesterday. 7 dead and over 117 injured in a Chernihiv attack. I can't pronounce the place names, unfortunately, in the Ukraine. President Zelensky said a theatre and a university were also damaged in the strike the on the Conifer Square, Central Square. I can't read my writing. The thing that brought this to mind was the dead and the injured aspect and the places that were destroyed. I've mentioned it before many times. Casualties of war, just terrible. And it always seems to be one-sided. I don't know if that's media attention, but 7 dying, 117 injured. The places were a theatre and a university, and the central square of that particular area seems all civilian orientated to me. And I take it that's because it's a strategic city or town for that area. And what can you say about it other than unnecessarily deaths? We've got enough hurt in the world, and all we really want is for this to end. If this ended, even if it was round a table, shipping would return, food shortages would diminish slightly, prices would probably come down slightly as well, because we do know the war is causing an awful lot of these problems. And, you know, I think Russia's got enough land. If we're going to start talking about who's right, who's wrong, I will always be on the side of Ukraine. Russia gave it back just because they go, oh, don't think I ought to. I think we'll have that back. It was always ours. Wrong. Um, there's lots of that going on with Britain, where we've given a lot of land back. It was never ours. It was taken years and years and years back. Russia needs to think about that. We can be all happy again, is what I really want to say. The next news article was all over the news on Friday, and I dare say it struck the world as well. And that's the story of Lucy Letby. Now, I was on my walk when this took up a whole hour of breaking news. But let's just read out what I wrote. Nurse Letby was found guilty on Friday of murdering 7 babies in the neonatal unit at a Chester hospital, and 6 attempts to kill 4 babies, all between June 2015 and 2016. Letby covered her tracks by using various methods, including injection of insulin and injecting air into the baby's feeder tube, amongst others. She will be charged and sentenced on Monday. Now, this was all over the news. It's been going on for quite a while. I think it was mentioned in 2016, but it's taken till now for the 9-month court case to get heard. And some of the atrocities and mistakes that happened to bring Lucy Letby to court and to face her, her targets. Terrible. Some of the babies that weren't killed have now got terrible life-threatening injuries like brain damage because she went around killing these babies by fiddling about with the tubes that would give them air, or filling air into the stomach lining through the feeder tube, insulin, which would poison them because of some babies are born premature and so are weak anyway. And apparently there was a pattern, some type of triggers that she used, which is 90 days after the birth of a premature baby, 60 days from her last attempt to kill a baby, all of this sort of stuff. And that sort of pattern was found when they found her diary. And she had written in her diary, "I am evil, aren't I, for doing these things? Yes, you're evil." She's now become in those books that we hate to have British people in, of most evil, sadistic serial killers. And it's so sad to hear of this. Now, you'd think to yourself, why did it take a year? But if you listen to this broadcast where this was all being mentioned, she covered her tracks so cleverly, and she was the nicest of person, didn't seem to come across as a person that had no feelings, and had killing instinct in her. There were doctors and pediatricians that had their doubts about her because there was a pattern, and that pattern was every time a baby was dead, the underlying person that was at every single one of those deaths that was on that night or on that day was Lucy Letby. But like I say, she covered her tracks. There was no way of actually saying it was her or not. The post-mortems were natural deaths from what they could tell, because the method of death could be easily looked as natural causes. Yes, don't really want to spend too much more time on that cow, if I can call her that. A very sad day, and I dare say no closure really for the babies that survived, and definitely no closure for those that died. And the last bit of news that I've got really is Michael Parkinson died. Now, this might not mean an awful lot to friends that I've got abroad, but to people of a certain age like me, because I'm in my 50s, Michael Parkinson was a mainstay of television. And I used to love Film 77, Film 78, all of the film shows where they reviewed films and then they interviewed the stars. But I always remember the earliest ones being Michael Parkinson, where he had a show where he would interview other stars, not just film stars. He would do scientists, sports people, people on telly, comedians, all sorts. And he asked the questions that somebody like Barry Norman on that famous film show that I just mentioned would do, because Barry Norman was all about what was it like working with this director, what's the film about, all of that sort of stuff. Michael Parkinson, it was more about how have you as a lady in cinema managed to get past prejudices, or how have you found it trying to climb up the ladder in an industry that's male orientated, or with sports people, say a very famous chat that he had with Muhammad Ali. Um, why are you so brash? How does religion work with boxing? Um, Etc. Etc. And it gave these stars probably a higher celebrity status as well. I mean, Muhammad Ali argued the toss with Michael Parkinson because he always came across as a very knowledgeable person, and Muhammad Ali knew that. But would also say, "You don't look at it from my life." For which Michael Parkinson would always say, "Well, I can't look at it directly because I'm not of a colour, but I realise what the society is like." And he says, "No, you got to walk in a person's shoes." Not being able to go into shops, not being able to go into diners during that period of time of segregation. You've got to look at it that all the people that are above you, that where you're doing all the boxing, are white, and that black has always been considered to be a horrible color. We get blackmailed. Heaven is always white. Angels are white. The dark is nasty and horrible, and that's black, etc., etc. So those chat shows, even for me at a very early age, were educating me while I was having fun listening to the answers. So when I heard that he had died, it was a very sad day for me. It should be a sad day for anybody to hear that someone has died, but he's not a childhood hero, but he's a mainstay of my childhood. And he started off so many other chat shows. Terry Wogan did one. Hardy did one. Russell. And many, many other people have followed. Even Des O'Connor did chat shows. So that just goes to show you how other people wanted to get in on the act. But his was class, pure class. And I love them to bits. I spent a little bit of time this weekend going over some of his old interviews, ones from stars that I really like, just to see if there was an interview I hadn't seen. And unfortunately, I had seen them, but it was good to remember them. And rest in peace, Michael. Great fella. I hope you now have some rest. And that fills in the news. And I usually do my shout outs now. So we'll go straight into that, because I haven't really thought about what to say about my week at the moment. We'll do it after the shout outs. So these are all people that have commented, and thank you so much for doing that. My little blog, literally is a weekending thing for a different type of purpose, which I try to make entertaining. And I hope you enjoy it, and most of you do from what you're saying. So the shout-outs this week are Jambon, Denny, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Ponder, Colin Jones, Down the Rabbit Hole, Through the Lens, Martroid, Paul Patrick, Colin Thompson, David Retro Games Play Badly, Steve's Gaming, 20th Century Gaming, Sergeant Barnes, or SGT Barnes it says, but I take it that's Sergeant, and Holly Berriton. And every single one of them has left a comment just to say how I am, or to ask me a question. And from that point of view, I really do thank you. So I'm just going to go back now to what I was talking about in my week. Yeah, if you remember last week, um, the blog was slightly different because I'd been to an event and I knew how that weekend had affected me because I was very tired on Sunday. So tired that, it affects my blog usually towards the end when my energy levels drop. And for that, I apologise, but it is a warts and all blog, so I don't apologise from the point of view that a medical problem is affecting me. However, saying all that, I had a great time at the Zap event. I've said all I needed to say. The only thing I will mention about it is that I then did a retrospective with Mainmeister on Friday during his waffle. And the one thing we both didn't want to do was to come across too negative. But I think we were on the borderline, but not contradicting ourselves. And what I mean by that is it wasn't the best, but we had fun. It could have been improved. And I think anybody that looked at it from a piece of paper that would have looked at space would have seen we've got problems. And I don't know whether it was all hidden, by carefully crafted words to make people buy a ticket. But if you think about holding an event in the floor lobby area of a hotel where people are checking in and also checking into an event is also going to be chaotic. You've then got to have the software to actually keep track of the people that are coming in. And like many have said, you could have walked in through a side door because you wouldn't know whether you're a hotel guest or whether you were there for the event, which slaps in the face, if you think about it, of people that spent 60 quid, or 50 quid to go to this event. So I'm not going to say any more other than I met some great friends. I had a great time. I reminisced over playing some games. I learnt an awful lot from some of the talks, and I came away more joyous than sad, and that's the best I can say about it. Just going to have some product placement. And then because I was so tired on Sunday, I had Monday off, thank God, and I did some things with my mother because she felt a little bit sad and deflated when my friends left because she had no one to fuss over other than me. And then we had the biggest hurdle in the fact that when you get depressed and it has a knock-on effect, I had to go to work on Wednesday in the office because I have to go to the office once a week. And that's 15 miles away. So my mother's left by herself, and all she's got is the crossword, the telly, and seeing if people are wandering in front of her house, to go to the post office. She might be able to have a chat with someone if she goes into the drive, and they see her there. Because although I do as much as I can in the back garden, nobody's going to be in there for her to chat with unless she likes talking to birds, squirrels, and cats. So you can imagine this week has been quite stressful in the fact that I can't help in that situation too much. It's a difficult one. My sister came and saw her this week, which is great because she comes every so often, and that breaks up the monotony of just me being here. And then when it comes to me, the difficulty is always being getting my working life back on track when I know that I've lost so much. And every day is difficult because you go into meetings and in these meetings you used to chair them, and now you're a person who observes or writes notes, chairs minutes, that sort of thing. and you just think to yourself, do I really want to climb up the corporate ladder again when they can pull the rug underneath me as fast as 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 fast as they did? You know, you spend years and years and years of pushing and pushing and pushing, and so many sacrifices, you know, of home time to do work stuff, to have the rug pulled under you. So yeah, we won't say any more than that. It's been a difficult week, and every week is different. And I try to reset my day every time I wake up. So that's the end of the shout outs and the end of that little recap of my week. And we might as well go to the comments. Yeah, let's go to the comments. So these are in no particular order. Hopefully I've missed none. Nobody has said that they've left a comment and it hasn't appeared. So I'm hoping everything is good. And we'll start. So Martroid is the first one, and it says, wow, that was awesome that you guys got to go to the Zap event. It must have been amazing to talk to Jeff Minter. Did you speak to Giles at all? He always comes across as a lovely dude. Sheep in Space is definitely one of my favourite Llama soft games, along with Mutant Camel series and Iridius Alpha, which I'm pretty convinced is my all-time favourite Commodore 64 game. Anyway, thanks as always for sharing, Dale. Cheers, mate. No, not a problem. That was great, Martroid. Alan asked a question and I asked a question and we got an answer from Jeff Minter. We didn't ask questions in the Graft Gold hour session. Sheep in Space was mentioned very heavily, as were a lot of the early games like Andy's Attack and Hover Bobber. And Maymeister and I reflected on the fact that we didn't see one computer loaded up with Hover Bobber. So very, very strange that you've got a guest and there didn't seem to be a section like other than for Archer McLean to have one of your big guests and not have a section of his games loaded up for people to play, or even a high score challenge. Jeff Minter is very arcadey. He was all about the high score. So mostly about. So you got to understand that those are things that you got to say you need to do better with next time. But what a lovely comment. Thank you so much. And we move on to the next one. And it's from Denny. Hi, Adele. How has work gone this week and how are you, my friend? I'm glad you enjoyed your day out with Alan and his friend at the Zap event. Sadly, due to my work pattern, it was impossible for me to go. Shame about Rob Hubbard, as he's someone I'd like to meet as well, along with Jeff Minter. A big thank you for telling him how I'd admired his work through the years from the VIC-20. Yes, because I did manage to speak to Jeff and talk about people that I know that have appreciated his games and how they've affected them in their later adult life. You say about others' generosity towards yourself, Del. Let me just say this, and others would agree with me. I don't know where this is going. Who know you, that you are one of the most generous human souls I've got to know. Your gifts and time you give in bucket loads and expect nothing in return. Bless you, mate. You're one of it in a million and a wonderful friend. Oh, it was such a nice thing to say. I didn't know where that was going at first. Generosity, I suppose, it's measured in so many different ways. I always used to think that the most generous person is the person that gives you time, because time is something that you can't get back, and it's something that you can't pay back. And the easiest thing for anybody to do is to buy gifts. I'm pretty sure everybody has done something wrong and bought flowers or chocolates or sorries. Do you know what I mean? Or have appreciated something and given people gift cards or whatever. And sometimes they can be a double-edged sword, because if they come from work, they can come across as a bit hollow. We got you a gift card. What? So I've worked for you for 10 years and you don't know what my likes are. You know, you could have bought a book on retro gaming. You could have bought a book on Elton John. You could have bought a book on films through the ages. So you bought a gift card from Marks and Spencer's. And that's not to put a slightness on it. It's just that I've gone through 30, 40 years of seeing people leave, and, you know, you put in £1 for their card and sign their card. And every time it's a birthday, it's always the person who's got the birthday that's got to buy the cakes for the office. And I've never understood some of this mentality that goes on in office environments. It's like, why is the person who's got a birthday today got to buy all the cakes? Surely you buy a cake because it's their birthday. What's this? I've got to buy the office whole donuts that cost me 20 quid. And if I'm lucky, I've got £15 in birthday money. You've just cost me a fiver just because I was born. It's I've wrestled through these things for years and years and years. But I suddenly came to the conclusion, you do things how you want to do them. I don't have to put £1 in for somebody who's leaving. I don't have to buy the cakes, although it'd probably be sneered upon. But I do, and I've always had this in me, have to thank people that have altered my life, or they've shown their generosity in spending time with me. And that's where people like yourself, Denny, you know, where I've just sent a few DVDs, which means nothing to me, really, seriously. I wanted something for you to have because I thought it fitted in your collection, and you spent time calling me up to see how I am, how my mum is, and chewed a cud over some of the stuff we used to watch as kids. And buying a gift, therefore, is the easiest thing in the world, isn't it? I mean, it takes no effort. Go on the web, go to Amazon, find something, post it. It's a no-brainer. But you hope that the effect it has on you is one of enlightenment, you know, where your face smiles, it lights your face, it gives you a good day, it fills a gap on your shelf, all of that sort of stuff. And that's the reason I do those things, is if somebody has moved me, I need to show it some way. And I hope the other thing for a physical object is I want them to also have something that when they pick it up, they go, oh yeah, Dell bought me that. That was nice of him, wasn't it? And then they're looking at it and they always remember where it came from. Do you know what I mean? Because I've got no end of gifts from my granddad, my nan, my dad, that I'll always remember they bought that for me. And now that they're gone, I can remember how I felt then and how I feel now about that gift. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Steve's question on black and white films piqued my interest. Some I love are A Night to Remember, Rattle of a Cymbal Man, Night of the Living Dead, and The Day the Earth Caught Fire, and all of the Laurel and Hardy films. There are many more black and white films have a magic that colour can't simulate. Yes, and I hope I came across that way, because when I read that question, I was like, you what? Can't watch it because there's no colour. Are you serious? Yeah, not worth talking to those people. And let me just clear my throat again. LFC, 3 pieces of Commodore 64 quality music I like are War by Rob Hubbard, Glider Rider by David Whittaker, and Bombo title screen by Ben Dalglish. Yeah, and I always have the hardest time talking about favourite pieces of music. because I could always talk about the times that I loaded a game up and I stopped the tape before the game even loaded so I could just listen to the loading music. Or I loaded the game up, kept it on the title screen, just listened to the music on a loop. Or recording that on an audio cassette and walking to work with the music blaring in my ears. And those are the things where you got to turn around and say, these had an effect on your childhood. And Rob Hubbard's one of those ones where he had this glut or this period where I don't think he could do much wrong. There's Thing on a Spring, Monty on the Run, Crazy Comets, Mega Apocalypse, Knuckle Busters, Alvida's A Monty, Action Biker. I mean, there are many, many, many. And all I'm saying is those would have taken up months and months and months of my listening pleasure. It's the same with David Whittaker, Glider Rider. You mentioned it was the exact same one that I mentioned. He did a lot more. I think he did a game called Panther, which is a bit like Blue Max, and a glut of others. And they continued as well, some of them, into my Amiga life, because my Commodore 64 days ended, I think, prematurely, because I got my Amiga so early. The Amiga didn't really take off until 87, 88, when it became affordable. I got mine in 85, 86, because I bought the business A1000 model. But you can only keep your Commodore 64 so long before you turn around and go, I don't need to look back anymore. I need to move forward with this new computer. And they're so expensive, the games, that I need to get some revenue together. And the only way that I can get revenue to buy a game that used to cost me $9.99 that's now going to cost me £24 plus is to sell my old machine. So there was a lap over, but some of the best stuff that the 64 did were in those later years, and I miss them. So thank you, emulation. You filled in gaps. And Ben Dalglish, who sadly we miss so much. Like I say, there isn't much to say about it other than these people shaped our lives. So if I can give a salute to those people, I will. Thanks a million for answering my question last week. This week's question, I want to highlight the skills and passion and commitment of Mark from 20th Century Gaming and Ray, whose channel is best known as Ray C. Both are incredible long play machines who complete the hardest of the 8-bit games on the C64, like Rocket Roger, Spiky Harold, Eyeball, Rupert and the Toymaker's Tea Party, and many, many more. Which channels do you admire in the retro gaming community, and why? Which channels do you admire in the retro gaming community, and why? Doesn't have to be long plays, may just be content or some other reason. As always, mate, sending the best of wishes to you and your mum. Thank you so much. What a nice, eloquent question. I love everybody's work in different ways. Mark and 20th Century Gaming I've mentioned in my blogs, and I will continue as long as I watch him during the week. Some people are diverse and do things on Twitch and do things on YouTube, and I have the hardest job keeping track of the Twitch side. And the Twitch side annoys me an awful lot with all these flashing hearts and sound effects and all this sort of stuff. But it is a fast youth type channel, I find, Twitch. And maybe it's because I'm just an old fossil. But whenever 20th Century Gaming is doing his, I'm playing some random games and I just want to chat, I'm there whenever it comes up. And you just can't question a person really that has that gaming ability, that he can just pick up a joystick or play on keyboard and go through all the levels, and he can usually do it without losing too many lives. And he rarely continues. In fact, I don't think I've seen him continue in a game. So he's done it from the beginning every time. And that's some gameplay. The downside of a long play video is you see the end and you see all of the game in between. And then there's no reason for you to go to it other than just to sample yourself on how hard it is. So I have to look at it from the fact that I watch long plays less and less and watch random gameplays more and more, because the random ones give me the ability to see something new and see something just for a short period of time before they move on to something else. And it inspires me to go, oh, I fancy playing that, Where a long play, if you see the end, you go, what's the point now? I've seen it all. Admire. People like Mainmeister, I admire because they've done something different all the way through their YouTube life. So with someone like Mainmeister, who I've known for a number of years, I've seen him do reviews on games, comparison on games, new games, new hardware, talking about the industry, talking about the past, talking about the present, whether something is arcade perfect or not. It goes on and on and on. Music reviews, in regards to top 10 arcade tunes, top 10 Commodore 64 SID tunes. And he doesn't just cover one machine or is biased. And I think this is where you have to go, is the best person that has a YouTube channel a person that is not biased? And I would say yes to that, because you want a rounded thing, not something with edges. And what I mean by that is I don't like too much fighting where this game was better than the 64. In fact, when I look back, the Spectrum killed the Commodore 64, and why it's got its popularity, I don't know. They're funny if done in a certain context. They're horrible and inaccurate if done sloppily in something. And I'm lucky that every single person that I've got in my subscribers and every person who comments is not a person that isn't saying something tongue-in-cheek. So I'm lucky like that. But I have come across channels where it's just they silence you in a chat room because you're a 64 user or a Spectrum user or an Amstrad user, and it's sad that they've got that childhood mentality that we had as kids, the playground, going, you're an Amstrad user, you want to come around my house playing on a quality machine, No, I mean, that was our kids, that was our childhoods. We've grown up. All of them were great. They all had their highs and lows, great and problems, etc., etc. So someone like you, Denny, we have a common interest because of the VIC-20. Our early lives were filled with text adventures that we played an awful lot of. We spent a lot of time on those. And we also recognise moving on from the VIC-20 to the later, and sometimes people will say greater machines, and we have a great respect of going back to those and playing them as well. because we're not so singular-minded that we just think about text adventures, and anybody who doesn't like a text adventure is a wally, because that's not us. And then there's the other side of things where when we turned the computer off, we had a TV life, or a life knowing that events were going on, and we reminisce about those events. You know, it could be anything, you know, Woolworths closing down, the marriage of Charles and Diana. All of those have come up in our conversations because we were talking about something randomly other than that, say about a TV program and getting home from school at 3:30 and watching the children's section of the BBC and ITV network. So I thank you for that, Denny. I'm going to say salute to you now and move on. And what an interesting question. And of course, people, if you're still watching and listening to my ramble, 20th Century Gaming, what a guy. Go and look that up and see some of the skills that you can have. And Ray C, another person who I do frequent. You ever want to see a game to the end and want to know how to do it? Watch that. The guy's immense on some of the, and like Denny has said, on some of the hardest games you're going to come across. Please promote anybody that you watch. They've spent their time doing something to entertain. And I tell you what, when you look at the crap on telly, you ought to be thanking them and paying them, really. We get to Colin Jones. Well done, Colin. He always comments. He always leaves me a message. He always asks how my mum is. He does some great content. Very, very knowledgeable guy. Some say as knowledgeable as me. Whew. No, there's none of that rivalry. We both come from different backgrounds and have a certain skill level, should we say, in certain areas that we have to therefore have a mutual respect for each other. And he's just a great bloke. He's even asked if I'm going to any events this year where we could meet up. So that cheers me up. It's that sort of thing that cheers me up the most. When somebody starts thinking, do you know what? I really would like to meet you. Are you going to NERG this year? Are you going to Blackpool this year? I'd love to meet up, have a pint with you, all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, I digress. So glad you enjoyed the visiting company and glad you enjoyed the Zap event itself, even though it was a bit too busy. Yeah, it was. £45 isn't too much if you're willing to pay it and can do so comfortably. I agree totally. Its value is, in this case, based on its desirability. Yeah, it is. I wanted to see Rob Hubbard, wanted to see Jeff Minter, wanted to meet my friends that from Scotland coming down, and I wanted to meet other mutual like-minded people. That's definitely a huge part of the point. My favourite black and white movie is The Day the Earth Stood Still. Shame they totally screwed up the remake. Oh my God. And The Day the Earth Stood Still, fantastic film. Bob Wise, what a guy. I don't know what his opinion was of the remake, which was atrocious, because I think he died around about the time it came out. Died in 2006. No, he would have been around. I'll have to look that up on what he thought of the remake. You know, it's always got that famous line in it. There's the robot clay towel, isn't it? I think. It's a poignant film. You know, we're all going to blow ourselves up. 50s type science fiction film. And ahead of its time, really. It's one of those ones that definitely I've got several times in my collection, whether it be in DVD, Blu-ray. don't think I've got a 4K. I don't think there is a 4K. I'll have to check that out. I definitely wouldn't be looking at any version of the remake. It really was quite poor. Notepad is what I'm using now to avoid the YouTube foibles. Yes, we've all been talking about where our comments keep going, and I suggested that using something that saves things in an ASCII format might be better, just in case it's weird characters or character codes that are causing the problem. I don't think I uploaded a video last week, was busy at work, and the weekend started bad. Not much of a question this week due to recent circumstances. Just going to ask how you feel about pets. And yeah, and I don't think you'll mind me saying, Colin, but I do feel for you with the loss of your family pet. And that takes me into what do I feel about pets? Because I've always loved, when I was a kiddie, the idea of having a kitten and playing with it and then allowing it to be an adult and still have it snuggle at the bottom of your bed, lying on your feet. And the same with a dog, taking it for walks, teaching it to sit, beg, roll over, and just be that lovely pet that welcomes you at the door when you come in, wagging its tail, slobbering all over you, so happy to see you. And even the smallest of pets, rabbits, gerbils, and even the ugliest but are still pets, snakes, spiders, they all have something we want. They gave it to us, but because of what they are, they die before us. And I think they've taught us how to accept death early, because you didn't really understand death when you were a kiddie before your teens, until your animal, your family pet died. Goldie the goldfish has now sadly departed. This is just something that happens. He's now swimming with the other fish in heaven and all of that sort of stuff that you get when you bought a fairground ride fish and it died within the first week and all of that sort of stuff. But it never encourages you or softens the blow when a parent dies or someone incredibly close, a wife, your son, your daughter. God forbid that happens before you go. Yeah. How do I feel about pets? I love them. And although we don't have a pet now, because my last pet was Rigsby, a little black cat, we have a stray cat. And it's funny to talk about cats because I don't think they've got one home. I think they live in many homes. This stray cat, lives only 5 doors down, flying over our fences, should I say. It lives 5 doors down. It's in two, it's 1 street away. But it comes in the morning, has its cream, has some biscuits, goes out the back door, and we'll see it again at 5 or 6 at night. Feed it again. I'll be in the garden doing some gardening and it'll want fussing and rolling over at my feet. And then it'll go off to its natural home and I'll see it again the next day. And that you might as well say it's our cat, because I see more of it, I think, than probably the owners do. But I don't know whether I felt that way about my own cat, Rigsby. I always thought, no, that's our cat. He doesn't live in somebody else's home. He was a cat that was in all night. He never went out at night. Only went out during the day. And he's, no word of a lie, he wouldn't go out until, 7, 8 in the morning. He'd be back at 11. He'd be back at 2. He'll be back at 4. Then we have trouble calling him in around about 8, 9. But then he'd come in, and then he'd be in all night. For those hours, couple of hours in between all of those things, I don't imagine him being at somebody else's house going inside, but I dare say he did. Anyway, nice little thinking on that. Thank you very much. We then move on. We get to Jambon. It says, "Hi, Del. Thanks for another great vlog. Sounds like you had a great time at the Zap, and nice to hear the excellent Main Meister was able to join you. The boys were back in town. Enjoyed the detailed description of what you had for your teas. No question this week, sorry, as I think my brain has broken after some unexpected boozing this week. Thanks again, sir, and all the best." No, my pleasure. And if I didn't salute Colin, I'm doing it now. When it comes to Jambon, I'm going to be seeing him, I think, in the next 2 weeks. We're going to Pinfest, which we did last year. I enjoyed my time with Pinfest. And it was made all the more pleasurable going around with Jambon because we'd do some high-scoring bits and we'd all do our own little bit. And I recorded some footage and sat down and had a drink and a meal together and then go our separate ways at the end of the event. And it didn't take up the evening, so it was just nice that you got out the house, spent a good 6-7 hours with great company, playing on some exceptional machines, and then travel back and think about it, and then wish at the end of it, I wonder if we'll be doing it again next year. And that's what I've got to say about last year. And this year, I'm hoping for more of the same. Only this time, I think I'm going to destroy you, Jambon, at more tables. It's just one of those things where I've honed my skills. I've been playing on virtual pinball and Steam pinball, and I think now is the time that your crown is gone. Bring it on, baby. I hope that makes people smile, because it's all of that nonsense, absolute nonsense. I don't feel confident about anything. Anything I've ever done, I've never felt confident in. And yet, I'm a very knowledgeable person in certain areas and can talk to death. But I still wouldn't say I'm the guy you speak to in regards to that. I've never been that brash. Looking forward to it, Jambon. Thank you so much for the comment. We move on. And salute to you, sir. Through the Lens. Great video, Delboy. It was great meeting you last week. Yes, Through the Lens is one of those lovely people that I've been frequenting with on some movie chat panels. Great guy. He's just bought a new microphone. He's so knowledgeable, and he's into that sort of like film where I think I was back in my early years, of obscure indie ones, but love the big ones, you know, the big celebrity mainstream films as well. But he will catch me out every time by mentioning a director of some obscure indie thing. Or I'll think it's obscure, and then when I go and look, I find out it was the biggest film last year or something. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm such of a fossil, is how I keep saying I'm a fossil, that I only recognise films from the 30s, the 60s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and anything after that, forget. I don't have hardly anything about. And to a point, that's true. You can't have as many hobbies as I've got, which is gaming, film, soundtracks, music, history, etc., etc., without, by the time that you get to my age, that some of that starts to get foggy now and again. Thank you so much for sticking by me and watching Through the Lens. And please, guys, if you ever are in the mood for reminiscing about TV or films, or listening to people talk about what was bad about a film, what was good about a film, whether they've bought it, whether they're going to watch it, whether they've seen, etc., etc., go to people like Through the Lens, Playtendo Guy, Rock God 2004, Scott's Gaming, Classic Gaming, etc., etc. They're incredible. And most of the time I've got their links in my description. Okay, so we move on. David's retro games play badly. Always great. He's got everything bullet pointed. Would love to have made it, but as you're probably already guessed, I am at work. He's changed that first line, and he's talking about, I'd have loved to have gone to Zap, but I was at work, because I always keep him company. Yay. Right. Lots of good friends were there. I've seen loads of pics. A lot of the arcade machines were my good friend's Alex's. He has an amazing collection. Look forward to hearing your thoughts on the Big Lebowski. My favourite board game would probably be Space Crusade. Was always a fan of the 80s trailers. I don't matter what type of film it was. The voiceover was always a deep, gravelly American. I think it was the same American as well. In the suburb he dwells. Or something silly like that. Yeah. They really were cringeworthy when you start looking at them now. They were great. I keep thinking about those now. There was a comedian that used to do the voiceover guy. I think his name was what was his name? Oh, he was a Mexican stand-up comedian. Not Stavros or whatever it was. It was... Right, it'll come back to me. Swiv is a personal favourite game. Cracking shooter on the Amiga. Yes, it is. Not watched after hours. Looks fun. It's great. It's a Scorsese film. It's dark. It's low budget. But you can imagine it happening to you is the best way that I can explain it. Because it all happens in one night. And from that point of view, it's great to come back and watch. Because you need to know, what would I do in that situation now that society is like this? Are there going to be people in diners that are willing to give you some dollars to get a taxi to get home because you've lost all your money? That sort of thing. Yeah, I think it's great. Great trailers. Thanks for the company, matey. Oh, and it's my pleasure, David. Thank you so much. Love your channel to bits. Can't wait for it to get on its feet again and move forward. The pickups that you've got are always entertaining. Thank you very much. My salute to you, sir. Paul Patrick, another good listen, Del. Enjoyed hearing about the Zap event. As a Commodore 64 fan, have you listened to the Zapped to the Past podcast? It's a good listen, with the hosts reviewing all the games featured in Zap magazines, featured in each monthly issue, which can sometimes bring to light a forgotten gem of a game. Going to stop there and just talk about that. I have listened to Zap to the Past, and I was immensely happy when I heard that there was a podcast that was doing exactly that. Because I don't know if you noticed, but if you go onto YouTube and you watch certain YouTubers doing, we're going to review Zap Magazine 1 and we're going to go through the lot and over the next period of months, they stop. They get to something like issue 5 and stop and go, no, I'm not going any further. Boring. People aren't really interested, etc., 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 which is a great shame because there's like 60 or 70 magazines. So if a podcast is going to come out and review them all themselves, great. Trouble was, I found that they were being harsh for no real reason to be harsh. I'm the type of person that looks at things with a toe in the past. So if they're reviewing something like Spy Hunter, which they did in their very first blog, and I don't mean to contradict them, and I don't mean to badmouth them, these people that did the podcast, but they talk about the game was crap anyway. It's a bit blocky. Sound is nearly non-existent. I played it for about 10 minutes, but that's about all I could bear. It's not really a great review. And when they see the review of 60 or something percent from Zap, which meant it also got a sort of like a medium lukewarm review. I think it was in the 70s actually. And for them to come back and say, nah, in the history of Commodore 64 games, that's below 50%. You got to turn around and go, that game was written in 1984 or something, right? The Commodore 64 had been out a year and a half. It's based around an arcade game that was quite simplistic in itself, so really quite accurate. And it had limited sound anyway, just the sounds of a machine gun and helicopters. The tune was very simplistic and short, and it was right at the beginning and didn't play during the game, so it's pretty accurate from that perspective. You got to turn around and go, you're looking at it for its worth in 2013. Well, heavily advertise the fact that your podcast is looking at a game that was made 40 years ago with today's values and today's gloss, because I don't see you ever giving a good review to anything unless it was so unique that it has never been repeated or was a personal great game of yours. So I continued to listen, and I got to a point and I went, nah. There was far too many other things for me to listen to as well. But it's a great listen. I love the idea of it. And if you can get past some of the snide remarks, it's an incredibly good listen. It just wasn't for me. Really, let's put it down to, it wasn't for me, and there's great enjoyment for everybody else to listen to on it. And I hope I've promoted that for you boys. Zapped to the Past podcast is out there, I think, nearly every week. And it has all those things that we've mentioned before, past reviews, looked at again, some real gems in there, and definitely you can go away with a random game from any of those podcasts and get some enjoyment out of it. So you continue, Paul. Breakdown is a terrific movie. Do you remember the 90s sci-fi show Dark Skies, which starred J.T. Walsh, who was also in Breakdown and was sadly cancelled after one season? Yes, I do remember Dark Skies. It was at a time where I was watching Farscape and a number of other shows. The 4400, is it? The Farscape, Babylon 5, the multitude of Star Trek shows, which I think was then up to, at that point, was up to about the 4th or 5th iteration. Then there's Sequest DSV and all of those. Dark Skies was one I picked up, watched, and was sad to see it go. One season wasn't enough. And yeah, what can I say about it other than it's worth a watch? It's, I believe, on Blu-ray now, if I remember rightly. Was on DVD for definite. And if not, I think it's on some streaming services, but I'd have to check. Just mix it up with a bit of water. Thank you very much for watching and listening, Paul. Brilliant that you found some entertainment in it. I hope you come back and listen some more. Then we come to Colin Thompson. Great Vblog, Del. Would be good to meet Rob Hubbard or Alistair Brimble. They are amazing and talented people. Nice collection of films. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is brilliant. Sorry I didn't sub to you before. Oh, that's fine. You're here now. And the beauty of YouTube means that you can go back and look at all the other 70-odd blogs if you really, really want to. I wouldn't suggest that. I think you can, if you're interested in the experiment, which was while you're going through a bad patch in your life, which was a year long, just look at the pictures of each of the weekly blogs, and you will see me perfectly looking okay guy to unshaved, couldn't give a shit how he looks attitude. And then you can just listen to the first 5 minutes and it'll talk about what's gone on in my life, which I generally do at the beginning after the news, and you'll see the reasons probably on why I was having a bad week that week, because that's what it is. It's a warts and all blog, and you can usually tell a good week just from the demeanour, whether you've shaved, combed your hair, all that sort of stuff. Thank you for being around, Colin. And thank you for your comment. Brilliant. Down the rabbit hole. Good stuff as always, Dal. If I ever get across the pond for a visit, I'd like to reserve a spot on your couch to watch Star Trek The Motion Picture 4K cut, because I'd love to see it on a proper system set up to display correctly. Yes, unfortunately, Maymeister has beat you to the post again, down the rabbit hole. He saw that before you. I'm only joking. Of course you're welcome. By God, I'd love it. My mother would love it. My God. I'm jealous you got some signatures of developers you grew up with. I'm trying to think of anyone similar. I wish I could get an autograph from maybe Nolan Bushnell. Would be a good choice. It is nice to get them. I'm not big on signatures now. Back in the day, it was signature this, signature that. And every time I went to a place, when I went on holiday, I would, as soon as I entered the city, and this is really strange, I'd look for a Planet Hollywood. Don't know what it is. I've got to have Planet Hollywood Las Vegas. Got to have Planet Hollywood Los Angeles. Got to have Planet Hollywood Florida. Got to have. It was like, what? They're the most boring T-shirt in the world, and all it's got is the city you went to on it. And I must have a collection of 30 of them. They were everywhere, weren't they? Planet Hollywoods or Hard Rock Cafe. My God, that was the other one. And if it weren't Planet Hollywood, it was like, where's the Hard Rock Cafe? Gotta get a T-shirt. Oh. Anyway, rant over. Whatever Steve says regarding your finger salutes, yeah. If you are considering dropping some of them, my vote would be the single finger salute, as that seems quite American, whereas the two finger salute is definitely more British, based on archers during the Battle of Ashcourt, don't you know? Yes, because they pulled their the bowstring back. And I haven't come across a Steve comment yet, but well, okay, there you go. Get in. Yeah, love you really, bastard. So we'll do that. We'll do that for you this week. Speaking of UK events and places, I'm intrigued about the place in Wales you mentioned called Wookey Hole. I'll have to peek down there and see if I can spot Chewbacca. Well, yeah, and Cheddar Gorge. There's lots of places I've been to. You used to go to them with school trips. I remember we went to the school trip for the White Horse. The White Horse is a lined white horse on the side of a hill that's been there for donkey's years. And it's one of those drawings that was done by ancient British. You know what I mean? And of course you've got Stonehenge and the Rollright Stones and lots of other stuff. And they're all worth watching. I think you've been to an awful lot of them from what I've been reading and listening to on your own channel, Rabbit. And I know you came over and you met Mainmeister and you've been to Scotland and you've um, been to Glastonbury, I think, or something like that. So I know you've been about a lot. Now, for me, I've never been to Canada. And you know what? I'd love to do that. The one place I haven't been to in America, though, I think it's on the border of America and Canada, is Mount Rushmore, where they filmed North by Northwest with all the American presidents carved out of that mountain. Oh yeah, I'd love that. Niagara Falls as well. Wouldn't mind that. Even, I mean, it's just a big thing, isn't it? All that water pouring over. You can just imagine how cool it is. Oh yeah. Yeah. Anyway, finally, I have a funny tale regarding the film After Hours. Saw it in cinemas back when it was new and loved it so much. I recommend it as a movie rental when it released on VHS. The entire family hated it, and it became famous as the film no one understood why I liked it. And I have to apologise because I need to watch The Big Lebowski, and I'm going to give you my review. I will give you my review next week. I will make time. It's one of those things where I was so tired at the end of last week, and then I've done my 4 days at work because I had Monday off, that I now approach this week now going into another 5-day week. And I tend to find when I finish work that I do a few little jobs for my mum, and then I fall asleep, and all of a sudden it's 8 at night. And I must be old. And I must be old, Kevin. I'm so sorry. I don't want to do that with The Big Lebowski. I want to do it with open-eyed, like find a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning and watch it. Do you know? I'll do that. And then we got Ian the Rambling. So thank you very much down the rabbit hole, Ian the Ramblers. Thanks for the shout out. I enjoyed your blog. Though as a non-gamer, I had no idea what you were talking about. However, you have an obvious passion for it. For me, it's been a week that has just gone by with some bad days of pain. The visiting nurses smile and laugh in a knowing way when I joke that they will be coming here until I pop my clogs. Oh God, I'm so sorry to hear that. I've been listening to 2 CDs that John of Mondo Chalavec kindly sent me with some films. He's a talented guy, and I'm loving the music. It's right up my street with punk and indie influence. The only thing is my old age. I can't keep up with. Can't leap up and down like I did in the days past. Yet it really lifts my spirits, and I become more nostalgic for the late 70s and early 80s. Yes, I've done that myself, Ian. And yeah, I feel a little bit the same. I've never really jumped up and pranced about and all that sort of stuff, unless I was pissed at a nightclub. But there is music where I remember and I'm bopping about and moving my head around and fake playing the piano and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And don't worry about being a non-gamer. There's still life in you yet. No, I'm not going to be talking about that. You're a big guy on films and soundtracks from what I've watched of your videos. And of course a big TV watcher like Doctor Who, Blake 7, Tripods, etc. From that point of view, you've got everything that I also did. It's just that gaming is also something that was happening to me, and it shaped my career in computers. So of course it probably is my number one, even though films and stuff started before that point. And the reason for that is the computer explosion was the 80s. It was 1980. The games console started earlier, a couple of years. Arcade machines predate them as well by a couple of years. But getting your first computer, expanding that, moving to the next computer, to then buying your first PC, to then using a PC in an office, to then maintaining them while in an office is a cycle. And therefore, it shaped my career. And that's everything. There wasn't one there from Steve's Gaming. Not a problem. My salute to everybody. Thank you so much. And we move on, don't we? Yes, we do. And just have a quick drink. And we get to watched on YouTube. Now, that's your stuff. Not your stuff that I've watched on a regular basis that aren't people that generally comment on my channel, but do on occasion. This week in Retro and Tech Moan, as you remember, are the two things that I always watch on a Saturday. They're always out at 10 o'clock on a Saturday, generally, should I say always. There's some they have to have holidays, you know. So this week in Retro's topics were the game Wipeout on a browser, from Ultimate to Rare, 40 years of gaming, an article on Battletech mech games. So yeah, just about a little bit of everything this week. So I have played Mech Commander and stuff from the Sierra label, along with a number of other big box mechs games. In fact, I've shown those in previous blogs. Ultimate Play the game were very, very respected in the 80s. I had a Commodore 64. I still played the Spectrum ones around somebody else's house. The Commodore 64 side of Ultimate Play the game was not that well respected, although Staff of Karnath and Entombed weren't bad. And being able to play Wipeout on a browser, isn't it amazing that you can now code that game in a browser? Wow. Pretty good, really. There's a lot of stuff there. Wipeout brings back happy memories. I remember being able to play that in a nightclub because PS1s were being used in nightclubs for psychedelic visuals. But sometimes they'd have a display case with a joystick that was sticking out from the that was attached to the wall, so you couldn't take it home with you, and you'd be able to play Wipeout. It was usually Wipeout or Battle Arena to Shinden or something like that. The very early games, Virtua Fighter or something like that were in the nightclubs. It was the very early PlayStation 1 stuff anyway. Then Tecmone. Now he had an interesting one this week called the Mighty Tiny, the smallest record player in the world, which he will let go as a statement because there was smaller. But let's just go back a step here. This little tiny record player fitted in your hands, and they purposely made little records, like singles, that you could play. They had a stylus that didn't use an arm. It was linked to the top of the roof of this record player, which you closed down because it was clam-shaped. And the speaker was also a spring connected to the roof of the speaker to give it a connection, so it sounded warbly. It had a speed control, but nothing like 33 or whatever it was. The battery connected, and you had a slider for speed, and I believe it played like in the 99 range, you know, where you've got 33 revolutions per second RPM and 75s. I think it's even higher for these little tiny players. And it's an interesting thing to watch because he repaired it, played them, which is awful, then tried to play them on modern equipment. Awful. You won't get anything very great out of this. But then he started to talk about the history of where they came from. They came from a guy called, what's his name? Don Pointer. Now, that name meant nothing to me until he started talking about what Don Pointer came out with. He came out 1,000 novelty toys. I don't know if you remember ever having a novelty toy where you had a coin box and it had a hand that came out of the grave, picked up the coin and dragged it into the box. That is a Don Pointer novelty item. And he also had things like light bulbs that lit in your hand, and that's because you wore a ring on your finger, and it was a connection to the base of the light bulb, so it created a circuit. And he did all these sort of like novelty things, whoopee cushions and stuff. So that end of that show just did it for me, because that brought back that memory of that money box. I'll never forget that skeleton hand coming out and taking my 10 pence and putting it into the coin, into the money box. Brilliant. And that started off, by the way, as being a hand coming out and turning itself off. That was the original reason for that box. Then we get to Seb's place. Seb, brilliant chap. He's been mentioned before. He's done some stuff in regards to Battle of the Games, like Bruce Lee and so forth. He wanted to know, what does a modern 12-year-old think of an 80s board game called Space Attack? And I had to think to myself, what's Space Attack? My God, I usually know all these things. It's a gyroscope game with pucks. It acts like a puck. Brilliant. I remember playing Crossfire and all of that. So it was interesting to know what this 12-year-old thought. She thought it was actually all right. That's good. Means it holds up. I then asked the question, what does she think about Manic Miner? Is she got the patience for Manic Miner? He's going to go away and have a little look at that. Then we've got G-Man Lives. Now, nothing really to say special about that channel, because this is just random channels I'm talking about now. But he did a retrospective called So They Finally Remastered Quake 2. And yes, so many articles this week have come out because Quake 2 is now on Steam and it's been remastered with higher resolution graphics and effects. And Quake 2 is one of those games that wasn't as wildly and lovely received as Quake 1 was, as it had a more story orientation to it, but was a good game. I'm in agreement. About time they did it. Glad it's there now. I think it's quite cheap. I think it's $7.99 at the moment. Something to consider. Then we've got Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I just talked about. He did a review of Brain of Morbius, one of my favourite Doctor Who episodes, because it's got a Frankenstein vibe to it. I'm not going to say too much about it, because I'd like you to Google it and figure it out yourself, and then work out whether you want to watch Doctor Who or whether you want to actually watch Ian talk about it for a little bit before you do. And then we get to the stuff with the movie panel stuff. So we get Rock God 2004, great channel. You've got Did You See That? You've got Scott the Movie Critic. You got Playtendo Guy. You got so many. And they all have channels. I was watching one last night, Kick-Ass Films, with Jake. And we basically just talk about films. I do apologise, yawning a little bit there, but starting to feel a little bit tired now, fatigued. Well, what are we up to? I'm just going to make a record of that. So 1 hour and 23. That's not bad. I'm still feeling okay. And all I want to say about these people is I'm just going to go over some of the stuff. So Rock God 2004, unboxing and subscriber mail, a day out watching Jaws with his friends, and a review of various films. Now, what I have to say about that is that that's quite a bit of output when you consider that none of that is talking about the panel that he talks on about films. So if you had 3 evenings worth of talking about films, plus the 3 videos he came out with that week, that's nearly 1 a day. And he's been doing that for months. That's where I'm turning around and saying, you will get to know this guy very quickly, and what a nice guy he is. Can't say anything negative or bad. We don't agree 100% on everything because he doesn't like sci-fi. Which means that a big chunk of what I like can't be really sort of like talked about in any depth. But everything else is let's talk about it. Let's get it out there as a conversation. Yeah, brilliant. Do you see that? I was on his channel last Thursday. Brilliant guy. Definitely more a movie reviewer than a chat host for talking about films, but he does do one every Thursday. So it's bad for me really to say that, but it's just that all the other videos are retrospective reviews of films, and very entertaining they are too. And then Scott, the movie critic, has done a review of a vinyl record by Duran Duran called Futures Past, and I just about remember that album. Yeah, brilliant, great review. And of course, I've seen him many times on the chat channels for the movie stuff. So please go and support these guys. Playtendo Guy does one on a Wednesday. Fantastic guy. His usually go on for quite some time. Scott's is every Friday generally. That's usually for a couple of hours from about 8 o'clock. And those are the two mainstays, really. Then we get to your YouTube stuff. Let me just also get a bit of water. I can starting to feeling a bit dizzy again now. But we're so near the end. My energy levels are so much more improved over last week. I'm so happy about that. I think you can see it in my eyes. I'm not that, you know what I mean? So, your YouTube stuff, down the rabbit hole first. He did this week a Vectrex game of Bedlam. Now, I have seen Bedlam before. It's a good game. I learned a little bit in that game. Some extra advanced features that you wouldn't normally see in a game until much later on. That's definitely worth a watch. A, if you're interested in the Vectrex, and B, if you're interested in similarities to other games and a chat about it. He also did Kenner's large Kenner's large Chewbacca action figure. Right, yes. Kenner's large action figure Chewbacca. Yes. Now, what you have to understand about Kevin is that his childhood also consists of Star Wars, and he bought the figurines, the little small ones that are very, very small. Then you got the 6-inch ones, I think, and then you got 12-inch characters, and he's got a Chewbacca, and his Chewbacca is in pretty good condition. Take it like this: those are now nearly 50 plus years old when it comes to as a toy, and the accessories were always made out of brittle plastic, like the crossbow that Chewbacca uses in the film. The crossbow has got a drawstring arm that goes horizontal. Now those snap off regularly, as does the sash that goes across his chest. To have the toy with all of that on it, I'm going, you've got a near mint toy, matey. Shame you haven't got the box. Then you can retire, couldn't you? Brilliant. Then we got Robert's Retro Gaming. Now he continues, as he always does, and I've mentioned this a million times before, but every single one can be a gem if it's the first time you've seen it. He's done Minecraft and Minecraft in Exile. So the Minecraft is up to episode 87. The Minecraft in Exile was up to episode 56. And that may have even changed today because he's probably released one last night just to spite me. He did some arcade gameplay on Spy Hunter because he's part of a Main Meister high score kerfuffle to see who's the best, who can get the most points. And then he did some Atari 8-bit games, Meteorites, and I'll read that. Cave Blaster. Yeah, I think it's called Cave Blaster. Those were interesting. I think I got more enjoyment out of the arcade than the 8-bits because I think I've played those games before, if I remember rightly. So I had little to add or say about them, and I knew how they worked. So definitely worth a watch. What are you doing? You ought to be looking at that stuff now. Great guy as well. He'll answer all your comments. So brilliant. LFC Gamer and Vlog. Now he did another midweek blog edition where he normally does it at the weekend, and he did some pickups, and there were some great pickups in there. I do pickups at the end of my video. It's very therapeutic to do so. It tells your family as well, if you ever pop your clogs, what you spent that week. So great. Definitely watch LFC's Gamer Vlog. Mainmeister did a couple of things. He did a Arcade Perfect My Arse on Battlezone, and he did a Friday waffle with me about the Zap event. So I'm not going to say any more about the Zap event. Go and watch Mainmeister's waffle, where you'll see me and Mainmeister talk about it for 2 hours. And I should think that'll answer every question you'll have on the Zap event. The Arcade Perfect My Arse are always entertaining. The one thing I will add, though, is that they were mostly programmed by Atari Soft, mostly came on cartridge format, and they were not programmed as vector games. They were sort of like tricks of the trade, where the graphics were made out of character graphics or sprites, if the machine had sprite capability. And they did that to give the impression of speed, because to try and draw vector lines on a Commodore 64 is not the best way to do it, because it's such a slow processor in that machine. It wasn't designed for that type of game. It was designed for more arcade-orientated games like Space Invaders, Galaga, Phoenix, Nemesis, Gradius, R-Type, and all of those types of games. You know, fast platformers. Vector graphics, nah. And then Ponder did a blog, number 56, Goings On in Colin's life. And what can I say about that other than he does a monthly blog? He's got therefore a lot to say. What he has got to say pretty much mimics what I say. Only he's in Wales. I'm not. And his family life is different to mine. So definitely more to say, and definitely something to watch, because there isn't really a similarity. And that's it, because I didn't really watch much on TV other than stuff with my mum and some films. And the films I watched were ones that came in this week. The Big Lebowski, I'm definitely going to go and sit down. But let's just talk about the things that came through the post this week. So we'll get the Marvel thing out of the way first. This book arrived. Oh my God, look. You can see how thick it is. Quite expensive. $150 book. I didn't get it in pre-order, which meant I had to pay a heck of a lot more than I did. If you remember rightly, I was hacked and all of my old pre-orders got taken away. And unless you get a pre-order of when something was there right at the beginning, you don't get the 50% off. So this was a £100 book. I had to pay full whack. It's sold out already. Now you can still get it because there is a backlog and they've got more stock coming in. It's just the initial batches sold. And it's called The Immortal Hulk. And it's the story. This is a story of 50 issues that ran in the Hulk. Issue 1 to 50 called The Immortal Hulk, where Bruce Banner is dead. And that means the Hulk is dead. Because when Banner dies, the Hulk dies. Trying to kill the Hulk is nigh on impossible. But something's happened, and Bruce Banner comes back alive. And he now has this weird thing happening to him where he sees a green door in images. We don't know what this green door is, and it's not explained until the very end of the story. But while that story is going on, this reads very much like the Incredible Hulk TV series. Banner going from place to place, trying to find a cure. He wants to, in the early days of reading this, he wants to kill himself, but he knows that if he dies, the Hulk brings him back to life. It gets to the point where you could actually chop the Hulk to bits. And in fact, somebody does do that. They kill Banner, chop his hands, his arms, his legs, his head off, put them in jars, and then something happens. The Hulk thing happens. As soon as he turns into the Hulk, all the parts try to join back together, breaks the jars, and it assembles the Hulk back together. And of course, when the Hulk turns back to Banner, Banner's alive again. Interesting. It's an interesting take, because for 40 years of me reading the Hulk, it's always been when Bruce Banner gets stressed or angry, he turns into the Hulk. And it always happened at a time that was inconvenient. But the Hulk was always one of those ones that was quite interesting, because they shrunk him down to micro level. They've blasted him off into space. He's been the king of a planet. But he is the strongest person there is. Most of the time, of modern readers' view of the Hulk is the Hulk has had Bruce Banner's brain. For me, I read it from the 70s. The Hulk was a mindless thug who could kill if it weren't for the fact that he's not that type of monster. Anyway, this one, The Immortal Hulk, brilliant. There's all the covers. The unique thing about these covers, they're all drawn by a person called Alex Ross. If you have a look at that cover there, you'll see it's actually quite lovely cover. Alex Ross draws photorealistic drawings and uses paint rather than inks. Stuff I've watched, therefore, and stuff that's come through the post. Roller Coaster from the 70s, about a terrorist going around blowing up theme parks unless you pay the money. Fantastic film from the 70s. Forgotten all about it. I remembered reading through my diary this week about my dad and I sitting down and watching Roller Coaster. It all came back, and I ordered it so that I could remember my dad and me sitting down and watching that film. Then we've got Cross of Iron, another film that I watched with my dad. Another war film that would have been on in the afternoon on a Sunday or a bank holiday. And then the last one is a film that basically was universally panned. The worst Paul Verhoeven film ever, it was deemed as. Destroyed the career of Christine Binkley, I think that's her name, who used to be in Saved by the Bell. It's had so much written about it on how bad it was that it caused a documentary 2 years ago on how it destroyed careers and was universally panned. And yet now it's respected. It's now a film that you have to have in your collection. It's not as bad as what people say it is. And that film is Showgirls. And this is the 4K version from the States. I had this imported. You can only get it on Blu-ray over here. And I wanted it to fill in the gap for my Paul Verhoeven collection, because I've got RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Basic Instinct and, all of those films. So I couldn't not have it in my collection. But my collection now of Paul Verhoeven films is now mostly 4K. So I'm not too far away. I think the only one I haven't got now is The Invisible Man, or A Hollow Man. That's it. And I think there's one other. Can't quite remember. And then films that I've watched that are old. down here because I went through my boxes when Mainmeister was here and I was explaining about Laserdiscs. And I said I pulled out some films. I never put them back in the box. And I thought, why not watch them? My God. So there's Broken Arrow, John Travolta and Christian Slater. These are lovely Laserdiscs. They always came in great packaging with all of the stuff there in the chapters. And then there was The Replacement Killers with Chow Yun-fat, which is an action, very much an action-orientated film. Again, great text about it. Brings back many memories. And then Outbreak. I haven't seen that one in ages. And being as we've had pandemics and everything, I thought, wow, that's pertinent. I'll watch that now. That's about a spider monkey that came into this country and started a pandemic. Absolutely fantastic film. And I watched all 3 of those. And I watched Roller Coaster. Yet to watch Showgirls, yet to watch Cross of Iron this week. But they are in my media playback. And being as I've just mentioned the media playback, I'm going to not forget that I've got my camera here that I should have actually have done while I was showing those videos off. So let's just get out of the way. There you are, look. The Incredible Hulk on my other camera. So you can see the difference in quality. Maybe you can get a still from that. There you go. And we'll go to media playback. Here we go. And I'm going to shut up. And you can watch some nice trailers to the films that I've watched this week. Or stuff that I'm going to watch because I've bought them, and I haven't got around to watching them this week. So I'll be back in a bit. Enjoy these trailers and hopefully no copyright strikes.
War is a continuation of state policy.
By other means.
Yes. By other means.
Why did you ask to be relieved from duty in France?
I want to get the Iron Cross.
Here's to the last Russian bullet. Do you ever think about your children?
Always.
Where are they?
I don't know.
Is it approach friendly?
What are we doing here?
We are spreading the German culture throughout a desperate world.
In my mind, there is nothing more contemptible than stealing the laurels which probably belong to a man who was killed in action.
Looks like someone else around here.
You were very violent.
Situation is worsening here. You're needed.
I firmly don't believe that the ideals of the German soldier, even
The German soldier no longer has any ideals.
Is that what you meant when you said all you are and may become is dependent upon this present company?
Well, you want it so badly.
a piece of worthless metal.
It's not worthless to me.
Ancient clanking a line in die weite Welt hinein.
Get ready for the thrill of your life. Now, Universal plunges you into a mystery at the speed of sound. Roller coaster. An accident in California.
That's 2 accidents in 1 week. Who's putting the lid on this? The police?
A recording from a stranger.
Get on the ride, Harry.
A drop in Virginia.
Harry,
Yeah.
remember what happens when you don't follow directions.
And a man in the middle on the ride of his life.
They're over the lift. It's too late to stop them now.
Let's go.
Roller coaster.
They are America's first line of defense. Best of friends.
Captain, map of the Earth. Here we go.
Fierce competitors.
Very nicely done. Almost as good as me.
Ready to protect our nation against any threat.
Carrying the nukes. You love having the power of God at your fingertips.
Not tonight, buddy.
But what if the enemy is one of them?
What the hell are you doing?
We got pilots down.
We got ourselves a broken arrow.
A broken what?
It's what we call it when we lose a nuclear weapon.
I don't know what's scarier, losing nuclear weapons, or that it happens so often there's actually a term for it.
The only thing more dangerous than what he knows
They believe they've got an exposed core. They gotta send in a nuclear emergency search team. By the time they find us, we'll be gone.
is what he's prepared to do.
$250 million by 0900 Utah time. If you have not... Good God. I don't know what the big deal is. I really don't.
But there's one thing
Smile, boys. We're about to retire.
he didn't count on.
I know his mind works. You gotta let me go after him.
Outstanding, Hal. That's the spirit. Would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons?
And what are we doing?
If you enter the wrong code 3 times, the nuke goes dead.
Unless, of course, I already thought of that ahead of time. You just activated a nuclear warhead, my friend. The clock is ticking. Care for a Coke or something?
John Travolta,
You lose.
Christian Slater,
You're out of your mind.
Ain't it cool?
Broken Arrow, a John Woo film.
In theaters around the world, where action is almost a religion, they worship a hero. And on February 6th, he arrives. Chow Yun-fat is John Lee, a deadly assassin.
Which brings us to your task. It involves a cop.
in a dangerous world.
After that, your obligation to me ends.
Where the fastest way to die is to refuse to kill.
There's been a problem. Bring in professionals. Men of John's talent.
Eddie, I need a passport.
I know this broad. Her name's Meg Coburn.
I want forged documents.
Okay. You said forged.
So what's the time frame?
Immediate.
Now, the replacements are here.
Don't turn around.
Cops?
Assassins.
You're getting yourself killed for a cop?
Not a cop. A 7-year-old boy.
And they're going to stop them. From executive producer John Woo.
What did you get me into?
You two make a cute couple.
International action star Chow Yun-fat. And Academy Award winner Mira Sorvino.
So what made you assume that I could jack a car?
Lucky guess.
The Replacement Killers. Directed by Antoine Fuqua. In a remote African jungle, a small monkey is captured. Bound for a pet store in America, the animal carries a deadly virus.
Now, I know that some of us have doubts about what we're about to do. We'd be less than human if we didn't. But the fate of the nation, perhaps the world, is in our hands. We cannot, we dare not refuse this burden. I'm confident that each of you will do his duty. God forgive us.
Your town is being quarantined.
We got 19 dead. You got 100 more infected. It's spreading like a brush fire.
What are you talking about?
If one of them's got it, then 10 of them have got it now. And if one of them gets out of Cedar Creek, we have a very interesting problem.
If that bug gets out of there, 260 million Americans will be dead or dying.
I'm leaving with the team in an hour.
From the heart of a small California town.
Damn it, Sam, I want to save these people same as you.
To the inner circle of power in Washington.
The most optimistic projection for the spread of the virus is this: 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours.
The greatest medical crisis of all time.
We can't stop it.
Begins.
Try to remain calm.
Many people are dying and are going to continue to die unless we find this monkey.
There will be panic the likes of which we have never seen.
There you are!
Attention, Portland residents, citizens of San Diego, residents of Atlanta, Denver residents of Detroit, attention, Dallas residents of Chicago.
Yeah, sorry, needed to get everything all sorted there. But I watched most of those Laserdiscs and remembered the 90s quite fondly at the start of this weekend, and had some great time. Very, very popcorn, forgettable type films, really, but ones that shouldn't be forgotten. It's one of those things where, you know, where you can put films on a pedestal, you know, like Citizen Kane and prolific films, Wizard of Oz, all of that sort of stuff. These films are not those, but they are great films. It's just really hard to put a finger on it. Possibly because it's an era where I was the most prolific at going to the cinema. And at a time where my collection was growing rapidly. I changed from VHS to Laserdisc, and now I was moving into DVD. And that's probably the greatest growth I ever had. is there. And yeah, a lot of John Woo as well. I don't know if you noticed that. The Replacement Killers is a producer, John Woo. A Broken Arrow, directed by John Woo. He was about a bit, wasn't he? But other than that, I'm rambling. I'm going to go off now and see whether England, the Lionesses, the women's England football is actually over, and whether we've won and we're world champions. I purposely started as early as possible. It is now just 25 to 12, so I might catch the second half. I think it started at 11. I'm not sure. It was 9:30 for the broadcast to start with all the build-up. So I'm going to say salute till next week, and I hope you've enjoyed as well other content from my friends. And I even did a Gravitators gameplay video that I recommend you watch, especially if you like Thrust. And with that, bye-bye.